All right. Y'all are set and y'all have fun.
Hello, friends and brothers. Welcome to Masonic Improvement, and I am your host, Dennis Yates. My co-host, Justin Jones, is feeling a little bit ill tonight, uh, and not in a 1980s way. He's actually feeling sickly, so he's sitting it out. He's on board with us, but he's sitting it out. Um, Glad to see you, brothers, here. I'm glad y'all made it today. Okay, don't everybody speak at once.
Glad to be here tonight, Dennis.
Okay, so today I got home after working on one of the properties, and Sarah and I like to have a movie day on Sunday, and I let her pick out the movies, and we typically watch Marvel movies on Sundays when we sit down and watch TV together, and so for our movie day we started out with Guardians of the Galaxy 2, but we went to we went to because we were going to go to the third one. We decided, well, we need to watch Endgame again before we go to the third one, so that we remember all the things that took place before that happened. So I'm one of those timeline guys. I like to stay in sync with what's
That
going
is
on.
very sound logic.
So we went back and watched that, and so if you guys remember at the beginning of Endgame, that's when they realized that everybody is gone, half the population is gone, right? And I'm sitting there thinking about that when I'm watching this, and I'm thinking, good Lord, it's such a depressing situation, and what are these people going to do, blah 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 blah. And of course these guys are wanting to go and get a time machine and snap their fingers and fix it all, right? Make a time machine, go back, get the stones, the stones that
The
Infinity Stones that Thanos, you know, killed everybody with, or made everybody disappear with. So, and I'm looking at it I'm thinking, man, that resembles our lodges, except it's even more than half. We're, in Texas, in the big part of in our heyday, we were at 250,000 members. And now we're at 54,000 members in the state of Texas, in the jurisdiction of Texas. And yet we still have all the same facilities, all the same everything. In that movie, it shows the Met Stadium empty and cars just empty everywhere. And so they don't have a team, they don't have anything. They're just not doing what they used to do. But we're still trying to do what we used to do. Now, let me ask you this. My question to you is, if you could snap your fingers and go back and get everybody back, but then knowing that they're going to leave again, right? So you get a temporary fix for a little while so you can gather up the troops and get some help and find solutions. What solutions would you come up with for your lodge?
No, stop.
To support the membership that you have today? That's my question to you. Go. I know it's kind of a drawn out thought, so you got to think about it for a second. Give me one thing that you would do that you think would benefit and create more value for your membership and support the lodges, knowing that they're shrinking. They're going to shrink even still.
My first thought is that, you're always making fun of Justin Jones for being the nerdy guy, and here you are talking about Marvel movies, and I'm thinking, well, he's the one now. Oh,
You
I'm just
know,
kidding.
I liked it better when your throat was broke. Why don't we just
No, I'm just kidding.
We
Uh,
really can't consider him nerdy because he's got some timelines off, but we'll get to that later.
you know, I could have, you know, told you all the things that went in between, but I didn't do I didn't do everything in between because then it would take several weekends to do it. We were just trying to do a jump start. But so seriously though,
Yeah, no, I was thinking like, the member engagement. You got to engage the members that we already have. That way they quit leaving.
and what
One
would be
thing
the first thing? What would be the first thing that you would do for member engagement?
is trying to get together more often. You know, we got
Hmm.
to be brothers. We got to be hanging around each other, get our families together, but also just us hanging around each other more often. Um, that's the only way you're going to become friends.
Interesting. So the social aspect, bring more of a social aspect. And now, are you talking about just in lodge, or are you talking about in other ways as well?
Oh yeah, mostly I'm trying to get the guys what they're interested in masonry, try to engage them in that way. Like, well, I've got a study club I do every Wednesday, and we talk about some educational topic, and then we practice ritual. But other than that, like we do things outside of lodge too. So there's that core group of guys that we do the study club with. We also go to the gym together, and we got a group called the Muscle Masons, and
Oh, nice.
we have like a chat group where we post our like pictures of the foods that we're eating, trying to get healthy, and we're telling each other, hey, this is what we did at the gym. So we're doing all sorts of things. So we got a core group of guys now, um, four of us that are real strong friends now, real
Nice,
brothers.
nice, nice.
But if we could get the whole lodge doing something like that, um, that's hard to do because we're from all different types of backgrounds. So,
Well, it is hard to do, and that's the $50 million question. And of course, I've got an answer already, but I'll wait until everybody else has a chance to give their answer. Um, but that's a great one. I mean, that's one of the things that the younger Masons are looking for when they walk in the door is that social aspect, because they're tired of living life on a on an Xbox, right? That's their communication with the outer world. And in a lot of cases, these younger brothers coming in, they grew up on that. So they're looking for that social aspect, that interpersonal relationship. So I think it's important. Anybody else got something?
I think Brad nailed it on the head right there. I mean, if you think about some of the lodges I belong to, we meet once a month for a stated meeting. We talk for 20 minutes for dinner, and we talk for 30 minutes in the meeting, and then we all go home, and I don't see you again for a month. And in some cases, there's one lodge, Quarry Lodge, we go dark for November, December. So there may be some people I won't see until after the first of the year, come up after October.
Right.
So if we're not engaging, inside a lodge and outside of lodge to some extent, then you can't build those relationships that are vital for helping engage your members in your lodge.
Okay. Jason, what do you got? I know you got something.
Well, I mean, I was thinking specifically, just kind of as a part of it, but addressing your first part, which was the whole zombie lodge concept, and it is a huge problem, in my opinion. I think we have, I know in this district we have several guys that are members of every single lodge in the district. And the only reason that they do that is to try and help keep them going. And it's like you're you're not you're not really helping anything. Well, it's not just a problem in the Blue Lodge. it is at least from what I've seen, it is a much bigger problem in some of the appendant bodies in particular, because they're very, very loose on when you suspend, and there's really not a lot of oversight. And part of it I understand. If somebody is not paying their dues for whatever reason, you don't see them, and nobody can get a hold of them, or nobody's seen them for a while, you don't know their situation. You don't know, are they now destitute? Are they, struggling, or are they
But
just
why
not?
didn't you call them if that's the case? Playing devil's advocate.
Yeah. Well, but that's what I'm saying. Like sometimes you can't get a hold. Like
Right,
somebody,
right, right.
you go into Grandview and all they have is a address, and sometimes it's even just a PO box, and you're like,
Oh,
why?
I know, I know. In fact,
Yeah.
I've got one right now, a guy with a 50-year certificate. Who knows how I'm going to get it to him? I don't know
Right.
where he lives. I don't know his email. I don't have a phone. I
Right. Well, I just went to the post office Thursday for one from Alameda Lodge, and his address is somewhere up north. I think it was Minnesota or something like that, and it's a PO box. And I get to the post office, and they're like, "That PO box doesn't exist." I'm like, and they're like, "Are you sure
He's
about the
in witness
address?"
protection.
I'm like, "Are you sure about the address?" I was like, "I'm absolutely not sure of the address. I have no idea." Like it
Right.
could be, but anyway. So my point being is that I understand the hesitation of suspending brothers. I understand and I get it. But there are some groups that I are carrying 15, 20, 25 members. And it was because the previous secretary just didn't want to suspend, and it's like, so this guy these guys are not paying, and when you get a number that high, okay, they're not all hard up, they're not interested anymore, right? They obviously have checked out, they're not going to be paying their dues, but you're continuing this on their rolls so that it looks like you're a much bigger organization.
Yeah, so it looks like
Eh,
you're stronger than you are. Yeah.
exactly. And now, so one of the first things I as far as I can get to, I have where I can be influential is I have made it a point, like, look at the statutes. If it says suspend them after 1 year or 2 years, however long it is, do it, because there's a couple things that happen. One, if they're not interested, you get them off your rolls, you stop paying their per capita, you're already saving the organization money. You can then, but also, if because you're supposed to send a letter and all that kind of stuff. Well, that might actually finally reach them to say, "Oh, I have not been paying my dues. Are they going to suspend me? Maybe I should get in contact with them," or something like that. So there's a couple of things that you can do, but um, anyway, if you can go to somebody else and we can talk
Well, I
members.
think that's an interesting thought because as another secretary now, um, I see what you're talking about, and or I've seen it. I don't see it anymore because I absolutely will not carry somebody that's not that doesn't have a good reason, that hasn't reached out and given a good reason.
Right,
And the reason why is because I feel like that's part of my obligation not to defraud the lodge. And
right,
if I'm making the lodge pay for people's membership to Grand Lodge, or to if it was an independent body to the Grand whatever, then that's defrauding the lodge. So, and that's on me, it's not on them. They're not the ones that are keeping their names on the roll, it's the secretary. So I'm not going to do it. I'm not
I,
going to.
I also cringe every time somebody just gets up and says, "Okay, well, this brother is non-payment of dues. We haven't heard from him. We've tried to reach him." And then somebody will stand up and say, "Well, let's just remit his dues for another year." And I'm like, no.
Yeah,
like,
that's where I stand up and say, no, not gonna do it.
no,
Do you want to
need,
pay them?
well, and in that case, a lot of times, if there is any hesitation, almost always somebody will stand up and say, "Well, I'll just go ahead and pay it." And even then, it's like that's completely within their right if they want to do that. I'm not going to
Yep,
force anybody. But also, you're still just kind of addressing the symptom. You're not really
you're
addressing
absolutely
the
right.
you're not addressing the problem. And I would much rather look. If somebody contacted me as a secretary privately and said, "Hey, look, I really enjoy being a Mason. I want to stay. I can't do it this year. I can't. I just can't afford it. I'm going through this or that or whatever." I have absolutely no problem bringing that to the lodge, even anonymously. Like, just say, "Look, we have had he doesn't we don't want to announce his name, but he has contacted us. I've talked to the worshipful master, and we're asking the lodge to go ahead and remit this brother's dues free." I have no problem with doing that if somebody comes to says, "Look, I just can't do it right now." But to not hear anything and this just assume that they're probably
Yeah,
I really have an issue with that. Anyway.
totally get it. Totally get it. As a matter of fact, like my lodges, there's a few $100s available to the worshipful master for discretionary funds for charitable and benevolence reasons. And so that's one of those things you can just go to the worshipful master without even talking to the lodge if you want to.
Yeah.
And he can make that decision and withdraw that amount from his total that's available to him to support that brother if he wants to. And if he
Yeah.
doesn't, then yeah, I agree. I agree. What you got, Tom?
Uh, I I was kind of wondering because we're talking about basically finding out what the members want or what they're valuing, whether it be education or whatnot. And I can remember years ago when I ran an auto parts store, we used to do a what they called a Franklin Covey survey, and it
Mm-hmm.
was where there was no names attached to it, and it was just the basic questionnaire was how do you feel about the company and the management of what's going on, and they could pretty much be open about what they wanted. But the correlation I was making was I at the time had we had retail managers that ran the inside of the store, but then we usually had a commercial manager that would handle all of our commercial accounts
Yes.
with garages, and I had two commercial managers when I took over the store, which was rare.
Yep.
And it was kind of like a friction between those two guys. And then when we did our second survey, because we would do them every 3 months, and found that, and what was funny was if you're in tune with your employees enough, you're going to know who wrote what.
Yes.
There's going to be no doubt who said this. And one of my commercial managers, because we had asked him, what are your goals as far as the company, where you want to be at in 5 years? Well, one of them wanted to be a store manager. And I kind of talked to him after the surveys were done. I was like, you do realize you're in the wrong career path to be a store manager, because you would want to be a retail pro in the store. That way you would eventually be an assistant manager, then you would move up to a store manager. And at that point, because it kind of solved the problem, we removed him from being that
Right.
manager to that, and he was perfectly happy. But up until that point, he wasn't really that happy. And the thing that I noticed was we've got a lot of employees that have plans of doing things, but nobody knows because nobody asked them. And
Right.
I don't know how, if we have a process to where we're just thinking that we know what the members want, where if we had something like that where nobody's going to put their name to it, then we kind of have a little gauge of where the lodge is at, because I'm sure if you have a inner city lodge like in Metro Dallas or Houston, it's going to be different than it's going to be in Goliad or Stephenville.
Yep.
Because there are rural lodge where I belong to a couple rural lodges where frankly, from all the brothers I talk to, they really aren't that interested in education. They're like, why bother with that? And it's kind of tough to introduce that because they're not used to it.
I understand. I mean, that's what I'm surrounded with as well. So I get it. It's depressing, but I get it.
Oh
It's
yeah, yeah. Because I was talking to brother the other day, and he had mentioned something. I was like, that is the one phrase I hate, is that we are just good old country boys in a country lodge.
oh hell no.
Don't do that. And I hate that. I was like, that's almost as bad as well, that's not the way we did it in my year.
Right. Yes.
It's like, well, yeah, that's why we've got to evolve.
Yes.
You know?
How are you smarter today than you were yesterday if you're just a good old boy in a country lodge?
And I mean, we just brought in our lodge, which is a small country lodge. We brought in 4 EAs since January, and we had maybe one that's interested in the education.
Wow.
But he also is the one that's doing the most work, because we have some guys, we have a floor school to do the EA practice.
Right.
And they're like, oh, see, you missed last week. How much practicing have you been doing? He's like, oh, the last time we came up here. I'm like, dude, 1 hour every 2 weeks is not going to get it done. I was like,
right. Yes.
It's going to take you forever because you probably forgot half of what you learned from 2 weeks ago.
Right.
And I only knew that from my personal experience when I had my health issues, and I basically took 2 months off. All of a sudden, I went to 4 different lodges a week to their floor schools to work on my EA stuff to speed it up. And I pretty much made through half of the memory work in about a month and a half because I was every day going over it.
Yep.
It was with different people. So then,
well, that's how they used to do it back in the old day too. Is it was an everyday thing. You'd sit down at lunch with a brother. You'd go meet him wherever he worked, or right outside of work or whatever, and that's how they used to do it. And that was a no brainer. That's just what you did.
Oh yeah. Because I've talked to people that were relatives of mine, back in the 50s and 60s. That's where they did it.
Yeah.
Justin's dad was a police officer. The guy that was teaching him was a partner at the police department. He could
Yeah. Right.
pick him up, and they ride around in the squad car for a couple hours doing it every night. And that's when you heard of guys getting raised within 3 months or 4 months. It was because they were constantly doing it.
Yes.
So, because I have guys where I know I don't want to be like a drill instructor with them, kind of yell at them about it. I try to take a more gentle approach, and it's like last week, because I used to send out text messages the day of the floor school or whatever to remind people. And last week I just said, well, I'm just not going to send a message out. And my wife said, are you sure? Like, yeah, I'm going to see who shows up. And of course, the only message I sent out was when I was at the lodge. I was like, well, I guess we're going dark tonight because I'm the only one here. And then the guy that was doing all the work, which was usually the first one that would ever call me if he could not make it. Everybody else, there'd be no phone call, no text, And he's like, oh man, I thought we weren't having it because we didn't say anything. So I just went to my son's baseball game. I'm like, oh, that's fine if you had to go to your son's baseball game. That doesn't bother me at all. I was like, I'm trying to get you guys in the habit of every week on a Tuesday, this is what we do.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the way it is.
That happens all the time, because I said, I really don't have the time to remember to send out a message 2 or 3 times on a Tuesday to remind you guys. We're all adults.
That's exactly right. We all know. We get a voice. We have a phone tree in Goliad, and I like it, but I don't really need it. I know that every Wednesday we're going to have floor school. The only time it's beneficial though is when we don't have floor school, and they do the message and say, we're not doing floor school. We're going to go do a degree on this night or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's when it's beneficial. But otherwise, dude, I know what we do in Goliad. If I have any questions, I'll just phone a friend because I've got a few of them.
Well,
One of them helped me put scaffolding up this week.
I have to, because I go to so many different things throughout the week. I have to put it in a planner on Google Appointments or whatever.
Oh, shoot. If you could see here, let me show you my calendar real quick. It's so funny. Most people cry when they look at my calendar. Look at that.
That's why mine is, because I belong to 3 blue lodges, and I have all the floor schools for them, all the meetings, because I said a lot of times there's one lodge in particular would have their meetings 2 weeks after my other two, and I would forget about it every time.
Yes.
So I sat down, I said, okay, I'm gonna put this on a recurring thing. And
Right. And that's what I recommend to anyone is to get used to using your phone. If you're not using your phone calendar, then you're doing yourself a disservice, and you're doing your lodge and the other lodges that you're a part of a disservice, because really, as soon as you hear about something, you should be putting it in your phone. That's the only time you'll see me on my phone in lodge, is if I'm putting in a date. Otherwise, I don't touch my phone during lodge. I don't believe in it. But
I won't remember it if it's not in my phone. Even a doctor's appointment.
I agree. And I'm the same way. And it gets to the point now, I don't get the little cards from my doctors or anything. It goes in my phone, and I don't need anything else. Before I move on to Cody, he's been so patiently waiting. I would like to tell brothers that there's Survey Monkey out there that you can use for your lodge and do a survey if you want to, and it's free of charge, up to a certain number of people. So even if it's just surveying, the first 50 people on your list or whatever of your lodge members, I wouldn't even necessarily worry about surveying the people that are going to your lodge right at this moment, because they're okay with what's going on. But I would find out why the people that aren't there are not showing up. That's part of the reason why we're supposed to also form a committee at the beginning of the year. When a worshipful master comes in, he's supposed to form a committee there's a committee in the rears, and maybe it's not first thing, but maybe right after the beginning of the year, for people who haven't paid their dues yet, to have a committee to call out to these people and see what's going on. Maybe that's something that you task them with, is calling up people and seeing what kind of things would bring value to them if they were to come back. Cody, what do you have?
This is going to be
and let me back up for a second. Right worshipful sir, thank you so much for coming on our show. We love you, we appreciate you, and I just want to introduce you as our Right Worshipful Cody Stewart, our Committee on Work member that's also a member of our inner circle. We love you, we're proud to have you, and I forget to say Right Worshipful, and I should. And I don't want anybody to think that they should not be respectful to, no matter how well you know somebody. If they're doing that title, you're working your tail off for it. So it's deserved. Just wanted to say that.
Well, thank you, brother. I love you. We've been friends for a lot longer than
Yes.
This program has existed. Before we were on Right Worshipful Brad Billings' team in 2022. We have a history going back years. So I appreciate what you do for Masonry.
Oh, thank you.
I want to build a little bit on what Tom was just saying, and probably take it a step or two further back. Depending on how far back we would go in time, I think it would be very worthwhile to figure out who we are as an organization. What is our core strength? What value can we provide before we go messing around with trying to get people in our lodges and then find out what they want? We're playing a fool's game by trying to be all things to all people, and we should have a core identity, and there are pieces that can surround that core. The social aspect, the fundraising, community outreach, and I'd even go so far as to say that there are people who are only in Masonry to do those things, and everything else is either boring or just a waste of time to them. Number one, we can never be all things to all people, and if we get lodges, and we do have lodges that are hyper focused on doing community stuff or to handing out other people's money in the name of charity. We have lodges who take it to the other side of that, who focus almost entirely on the ritual and the performance of that ritual. We have a handful of lodges who do a great job of education, whether it's in the true esoteric side of things,
Yes.
or just Masonic education in general. Whatever that needs to look like, we as the Grand Lodge of Texas should have a core identity. This is who we are, and maybe some lodges can build on that and do some other things as well. But we need to focus on, this is just Cody's opinion, we need to focus on the guys we already have on our rolls and be who we are to those guys. We need to look at it like a business would. It's a whole lot less expensive to take care of the customers you already have than it is to go out and get new customers. And I feel like what we're doing is abandoning, to some extent, and not all lodges, but we're abandoning the guys who are already here and trying to attract the younger guys or doing something else with unofficial, certainly not called membership drives. And that should not be the case. We need to take care of those guys who are already there. I'll shut up now.
I like what you're saying. I think that there's benefit to. So I like what you're saying. I kind of disagree on some of it, but I don't disagree on all of it. And I really don't disagree completely. I think that we definitely have to look at taking care of who we have. Number one, first and foremost. I had a brother one time that made the statement, "That's not my Freemasonry." And it was an older gentleman. And I was thinking, well, you just don't know what Freemasonry is then. But then I started thinking, well, that's not the pretense he joined under. Back in the 80s when he joined, it was a different looking animal. And the 80s and the 90s and so forth. And so the Freemasonry he joined, it did not look like what some of the young guys of today are looking for. So you're absolutely right. And we do have to take care of those guys that have taken care of us for so long. They're the ones who have kept the doors open. So we do need to take care of them. But I do think we need to have programs focuses on some of the interests of the newer guys, because those younger guys that are coming in, that's next generation. If you don't have anything for them to do, then they're going to walk out the door. So the next gen, we have to make sure that we're looking at the values and of that group as well, because eventually what's going to happen is this 80s group is going to fade out and the other group is going to take over. And so it's going to be the culture of the lodge is ultimately going to shift a little bit, because it definitely looks different today than it did back then. I mean, back then there wasn't even internet really publicly available. In the 80s, people didn't use internet. Only the people who were programming for the government knew what internet was. Everybody else, if you didn't have a Tandy 1000 or Well, hell, I don't even think my Trash 80 would have gotten online. And I don't know that my Tandy would have either. But if you didn't have, some kind of programming job, or your parents didn't have some kind of programming job, then you didn't know what the internet was. Today is completely different. They're growing up on the internet. And so they've already looked and researched a lot on the topic of Freemasonry, and what they're seeing when they join the lodges isn't always exactly what they thought was going to be there. And we can vet so much and try to answer questions as we go, but I know when I joined, no matter what these guys said to me while I was going through the process, in the back of my mind, I kept telling myself, you just don't know everything yet. Just wait. You'll get to those secrets. You'll get to the what was that movie? National Treasure. You'll get to the National Treasure, eventually. They're just not saying anything. They're keeping their cool. It's there somewhere. So a lot of these younger guys, they join even though they're not seeing the education or the big social aspects in it. They keep going because they're thinking, oh, well, maybe once I'm a master mason, then I'll see these things that I'm looking for. And oh, we lost Cody. Dang it. I hadn't. Okay. Anyways. So for the rest of the world who's not going to give up on me, I think that Cody's right. We definitely have to take care of the brothers that we have. However, we do have to have programs in place for the new brothers coming in. I would like to say in another instance, though, with Tom, Cody brought up the subject that we need to know what we're a part of. And if you have two brothers that came in that aren't interested in education, and one brother that did come in for education, did the lodge present? I don't know. It's tough. Did you tell the brother that is in it for education that was available, or did you set the expectation for the brothers that don't like education? Did you set that expectation that there's education, and that's kind of an expectation of Freemasonry, is that we learn so that we become better? I don't know. And that's a toss-up. I know that's a double-edged sword because you got other people involved. It's not just you that are talking to people. So you have other members that are saying, oh, we don't do that here. We just do this. We just do this. This is how we do our Freemasonry here. This is how we do our Masonry here. They don't even call it Freemasonry anymore. It's just Masonry.
Well,
Mason.
Dennis, to kind of key off what you're saying is, I think one thing we need to remember is these new guys coming in, they may not have an idea of what they're actually looking for in Masonry.
Some of them don't. Some of them don't know. Yes.
I joined for the history and quickly realized once I got raised that I really enjoyed doing the ritual work and everything and learning all that stuff. So, it changes as you get into it. So, it's hard to determine for these new guys what they're really looking for because they may not have enough experience to know yet until they're a master mason for, 2, 3, heck, even maybe 5 years, because they're still exploring what all masonry has to offer them. But on this topic, I want to key off of what Jason was saying, and I want to keep using your Marvel reference, just so everybody knows. I did win a $30 gift card over the week because I won Marvel trivia. So we're going to go with that. If you continue the storyline in Marvel where they snapped everybody away, but then they snapped everybody back, right?
Yep.
In the later movies, Captain America: Brave New World, for example, there was an organization that was upset because they snapped everybody back. Because there was people who actually thought that Thanos was right, and getting rid of the universe's half their population actually made things flourish and almost be better, even though it was a great genocide.
It's interesting that you say that, because there are many Masons who feel like we are right sizing, and it's giving us an opportunity to get back to what our roots really are.
And that's kind of where I was going with it. If you use your Marvel reference, you can compare that to, for example, Brother Enderley just posted on Facebook the other day that they have some lodges there in Houston that are pretty close together, that they're all merging together to make one big lodge. And so they'll be able to flourish.
That's what we should be doing. Yes.
And be better off, instead of having 4 individual lodges trying to, barely make it, have them all combine into one lodge where everyone gets together and have that, I don't want to call it a super lodge, but, you have a lodge that's going to flourish because now you have more membership and more things for those brothers to come together as one instead of being individuals. And so that's when you started talking about the Marvel reference, that's kind of where I went with it. Like I said, in the Marvel movies, there was people that said Thanos was right. And, I'm not for closing every lodge, but, if we start really taking the hard look and looking at merging some of these lodges together to make them flourish and be better, then I think that's the avenue we need to go down.
I agree. I was just replying to Right Worshipful Cody Stewart. He texted me and said his iPad died in the middle of my reply. I basically ran out its battery. The iPad gave up the ghost.
I know the feeling.
I knew that was gonna come. That's awesome. Oh, that's funny. Hold on just a second. I'm trying to reply to him real quick. That's a great thing to consider, is
So with what y'all been talking
Go ahead.
about, it makes me think about, you said in the beginning that we were at 250,000, now we're at 54,000. But if you look at like Grand Lodge, how many people actually show up to Grand Lodge every year? And that's like it's the biggest, Masonic event. But how many would show up if they could afford it and take time off work, or, health would allow them to go, or whatever? How many do you think would go? I would think probably 10,000.
Back in the day when it was mandatory, it was a full house. It was like what we deal with now every year. In fact, there was a lot more than what we deal with now. The past couple of years, you've seen it the past couple of years, and you've actually seen it more than what it was for the previous 10 years. You could have put any 2 years together, and we had more in attendance than before.
Yeah.
Any given 2 years before each year. So we're hitting around 3,000, 4,000 people now in that auditorium, whereas, there for a while we were, it was like 10 or it's like 1,000, 1,500 people.
Yeah, which is, less than 10% of the population of Masons, which is about what you get in activity from the Masons that are in your lodge.
But
Brad,
know what?
Brad, I just did the math based off those numbers and what I know we had last year. That is literally 6% of all Masons in Texas.
And what's interesting is that the last 2 years we've had a big influx in the younger generation Masons, the newer Masons. So, whereas before everybody was getting tired and couldn't make it or whatever, for whatever reason, everybody had excuses. The last 2 years, people have really started seeing the value of getting together again in that social aspect and experiencing the experience, being a part of the big experience. And that's I think we're on the right track, and I think it's because of our younger guys that are looking for that social aspect. Now, a lot of them are because they care about what's going on with our Grand Lodge these days. But I think that we're not in the same position we were 2 years ago. So now it's more of a matter of, now that they got there and got a taste for it, now they want to keep going back. I think you're right, Brad.
I think it would be, sorry, I think it would be interesting to actually look at, yeah, you're talking about the population of Texas Masons as a whole, but ultimately, the vast majority of them, I don't, I'm not saying to discourage them from going to Grand Lodge, but unless you are a master, a warden, or a past master, you can be there and, but you don't actually have a vote. So what I would like to see is what that percentage of, quote, the members of Grand Lodge, what that participation rate. And yeah, whether if we're seeing an increase in the sheer numbers that are coming to Grand Lodge, I would kind
We're
of
seeing we
I
are
would I would like to
with
split that out and see of the ones that are eligible to vote in Texas, is that percentage increasing? And because that
well, that's what I get my numbers based off of when I'm looking at it, is when I remember historically watching the votes. So I remember the votes, you would only see 1,500 people voting
right,
during Grand Lodge, and now you're getting 3,000 at the beginning of the resolutions, and by the time it gets to to officer election time, we're at 3,300, 3,500 now. So
yeah,
it's a completely different animal than it was. And
yeah.
so but I think, and I think Zach did a deal not too long ago
I think
that
and probably he did. He
that
does everything else.
was, yeah, that was saying that there was a big jump in the current masters of the lodges that were showing up,
Yeah.
and not so much just past masters. So you had a bigger influx of actual members of the lodge that were showing up, um, first time masters showing
Well,
up.
and from what I have recently found out, that's now it's usually, from everything that I've been involved in, being a past East, whatever, for us past master, you continue to have a vote in Grand Lodge. Apparently, that's not the case in Arkansas. Arkansas,
Say that again. I was fixing to text Zach.
oh, uh, in Arkansas, you get a vote your master year and your immediate year as a past master. After that, you lose your vote. So it's not a continual.
That's pretty
My
good, because that keeps it current with today's culture of the lodge.
that is true. So my point in saying that is that it is a, it is a, I would say it's a privilege that we enjoy right now in Texas Masonry. So if you are a past master, it behooves you to continue to stay involved so that we don't eventually go to something like, well, these past masters are not even engaged, they're not even showing up, they're not even, you know, making their voices heard. Why do they even need a vote? So let's go to a model more like Arkansas, or probably if you look around Grand Lodges around the world, I'm sure they have different rules on who can actually vote, and everything. But
Well,
it's something
what
right now. It's something not necessarily unique to Texas, but it is something that we do right now. And if you're a past master and you think that that's the way it should be, but you just sit at home every single year, then what good is that vote doing? It's not. It's you're holding a vote for no reason.
I know that's we had who was it? Somebody was talking about wanting to do a resolution to where people could watch on Zoom or whatever and cast a vote. But I disagree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
I think that you got a bunch of people that are disinterested with Freemasonry that are going to be controlling Freemasonry, and I don't think that that's a very good value proposition for
As
the
much
the
as yeah, as much as I'm involved in using online communications to as much as I can, to me, I have always drawn the line at stated meetings or tiled me. That's a better word. Tiled meetings. In other words, yes, do your committee stuff, do education, all those other things. If you want to hold things online, and I have no problem with that. But when it comes to a tiled meeting, I don't care if your online communication is 100% secure and no one's going to get in that's it's not supposed to. There should be something different about a tiled meeting. It needs to be in person. Now, maybe one day we're going to all have avatars and they can go for us. But for right now, till we have that, yeah. So Grand Lodge voting session is a tiled meeting, and yeah, it's probably inappropriate to allow Zoom attendees and
well,
voting.
I think that we should make um, watching Grand Lodge available to the lodges in the lodges as a lodge function in a tiled meeting. Have a TV inside the lodge and broadcast it, but only view, no votes. So you still want to send your members to see, to do the voting and stuff like that, but have it to where people that can't make it can go up to lodge and do it. Like people who have to work or whatever can go up to lodge. And he only has a few years. Zach only has a few years, but he's going to see if he can get more. I was going to ask him if he could go ahead and send me what he has. I'm going to tell him that it entered our conversation and everybody is asking about him. Anybody else?
Yeah, I know he had something like how many people was first time at Grand Lodge,
He did.
and then how many multiple youth times, and then I think sure that
He had first year Mason.
non
Yes.
non-voting Masons
Yes.
show up. I don't know if it was part of like the data or whatever, but you know, I think it really all boils down to kind of what I was getting at with the whole Grand Lodge thing is that we've got just a small percentage of our current actual members that are even involved. Really, you know, you're lucky to get 20% of your members at your stated meeting.
Right.
And, even the 6% that Josh was saying, that's about what you get at events and things at most lodges. I know
Right.
the event that we put on at Royce City when y'all came up, we had 4 members out of like 60 show up. And the rest of all the 60 people that were there were all visitors.
Mm. Yeah, that's disappointing. And I've seen some lodges to where it's the opposite. And I've seen some lodges that's just, and it's a hard situation to be in, trying to get out of that slump. And the bad thing is that when that happens, everybody gets excited because there's a lot of people there. But they're excited for the wrong reasons. Your membership should be looking around and saying, where's our people? Where's our brothers? Why, instead of being excited thinking it was a great meeting because you had a lot of people there, who really cares about if you got Joe Blow from the next lodge over at your lodge meeting? I want my membership there. It's kind of like the guys that give me a hard time in Goliad for not showing up, because I got Scottish Rite that night, and then we have Shrine that night. We have, there's all kinds of other things that pull my attention, and I feel bad, but at the same time, it's it's that value proposition that the lodge offers. I'm not interested in just going to another lodge meeting. I'm interested in getting something a little bit different.
Well, there was some stuff offered last year, but anyways,
there was stuff offered last year, Josh, but I'm also chief of the Knights of St. Andrew, and I'm supposed to be at the Scottish Rite every chance I get now. So, at this point, that's just not gonna happen, sir.
You know what they say about excuses. Anyways, Brad,
yeah. So you just made master in the wrong year. I'm sorry that happened to you. Not everybody gets blessed with my presence.
Well, I don't know if I'd call that a blessing or not, but in any case, Brad, you're talking about your event about only you had 4 members show up for my installation. The only people that showed up for our lodge was the officers getting installed in courthouse. Everybody else was a visitor.
Yeah.
So it's one of those, and then to look at it, everyone that was getting installed that night was a plural member. They weren't even a member of that. They don't even live in that town. So yeah, it's weird like that.
And that's exactly what Tom was talking about, is that you've got plural members everywhere, and that's not helping the situation. I truly believe that I'm one of the traditionalists, I guess, that believe that we are right sizing, and this is our opportunity to get back to the basics of Freemasonry. I think that while we do have the bulk of our membership still is members that joined in the 80s and 90s, and those are our old past masters that are still coming to our lodge. God bless them. They're still coming to our lodge. We do have to start incorporating that education and social factor that outside of our stated meetings that our lodges don't offer, so that we can capture the essence of what our new members are wanting as they walk in the door. Because I'm telling you guys, all the data is showing that that's what they're looking for. They're looking for the social and educational aspects of what Freemasonry has to offer. They're looking for something to help fill that void, and not so different from what we were doing when we joined. And what that void was to us is probably different from what the guys coming in today are looking for. But ultimately, that's what we're doing, right?
So, yeah, and that's for my year. That's what I try to do. Dennis knows I brought a lot of education to Goliad. I didn't bring as many social events as I wanted to, but I was able to bring some, and that was right before Thanksgiving, and we had a great time in Victoria. We went and ate lunch, and then after that we went to hang out, and I think we were in Victoria till 9, 10 o'clock that night and just hanging out with everybody. So it was fun.
Absolutely. I think every lodge should offer that once a month. Um, have a place that everybody gets together at and do that. And I think we should follow the example of Hillcrest Lodge and Fort Worth. And when you have those kind of and Arlington, when you have those kind of events, that's when you invite the people over that have shown interest in joining, and that's when you have your conversations. Do it outside a lodge. Don't show them your lodge rooms and all that kind of good stuff. Do it outside a lodge and get to know those people instead of thinking that you're really gonna get to know them in one 45-minute sitting at dinner right before lodge meeting. What were you gonna say, Jason?
Well, and I'm not necessarily advocating for this or anything like that, but
But you're gonna say it.
I am going to say it, but mostly as a kind of a thought exercise. I mean, so okay, and this is going to sound a little hypocritical because I do belong to 4 lodges, maybe 5. I think it's 4 lodges. I think
Several of us are plurals.
Yeah.
So we get it.
But I do know that, okay, like I said, there's some guys particularly in this district, belongs to every single one. And then, oh, you belong to 6? And then there's one guy, I'm not going to name names, but belongs to like 20 lodges. And at least one of them I know because I'm a member of that lodge. He's never set foot in that lodge. He's sitting in his plural. Now he's got this convoluted reason as to why he was whatever. It did anyway. Regardless, he's not violating any law in Texas Masonry. He's not doing anything.
I think wrong. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. We know him quite well. But my point is should we actually limit plural members? Like to say, not necessarily because, okay, I know you in the Elks, you're only allowed to be member.
It was a matter of time.
Yeah, you're only allowed to be a member. You're only allowed to be a member of one lodge, and that's it. Like, yeah. So there is not a concept of plural members. So however many we report membership wise is how many we have because we don't allow you to be part of multiple lodges. Now, again, there's usually only one per city, whatever. It's not really the same thing. But, guys that are, they belong to lodges all over the state. And you're like, there's no way that you're visiting all these lodges. All you're doing is sending in the money, which is, again,
or buying an endowment,
or buying an endowment and everything. So, I mean, I don't know. Would it be a good idea? Would it be a bad idea? Would it be? I don't know. It's one of those things you kind of look at it and you're like, okay, you're allowed to be a member of 4. And that's it. As opposed to you can't do 30, but you can do 4. So I don't know. Maybe, you know what I mean?
Well, it's interesting. I know that in 1946, and I'll go back and look at this because that is an interesting thing to think about. In 1946, you were only allowed to be a member of 2 different lodges. One was your mother lodge and one was your home lodge. So wherever you were raised and then wherever you lived, that was your limit. You could only be a member of 2. So and I think that that's probably a good idea.
Right.
I see the value in that.
I know that conversation has come up a couple times between me and a couple other brothers. If we got rid of the plural membership, how would that look like? And I can tell you right now, if we got rid of the plural membership, I know of at least one lodge, if not 2, that would shut down right now.
Oh, I know. I know, and that's the thing. And one of the things that I think that's preventing people from demitting from lodges that they're not attending is endowments. If we did a new resolution and I keep saying I'm going to do it, when is going to be the year? I don't know. I need to talk to some people and just make a decision. I think that we ought to make it to where we can move our endowments. Can we do it all the time? No. But can we, if we're done, if we want to demit from a lodge, can we move our endowment to another lodge that we are already endowed in, or that has the same endowment requirement? That way it doesn't negatively affect whatever lodge you move that endowment to. So let's say you have an endowment in 4 lodges and you want to, downsize to 2, like we're talking about how they used to do it, then just move those endowments over to those 2, split them up between the 2 or something. And that way you're contributing to the 2 lodges that you want to, and stop supporting lodges that should shut down because you know that they should shut down. I feel bad because there's a couple lodges that I'm a member of that should shut down. And yet they have that endowment. So they have those numbers. In fact, that's just as bad as, in my opinion, that's just as bad as remitting dues for somebody, because it's the same kind of inflated numbers that aren't real. It's not tangible numbers because that membership's not showing up. Go ahead, Daniel.
I was just gonna say, it gets rid of those zombie lodges. Like if you have to consolidate, you have to consolidate. You consolidate resources, you consolidate time. Like, how much better would so many lodges be if you said, hey, I have to dedicate myself to 1 or 2 places, right? Not that some of these places, you don't have the time to give the resources to them. Maybe you have the money, which is great, but how much better could it be for 1 or 2 lodges to have those resources that actually impact something in a very positive way? Then let me spread out those same dollars across 20 lodges or 6 lodges or whatever it is. Because is it really giving the impact if you don't show up ever?
You're absolutely right. And I battle with that addiction myself.
Well,
let's just call it what it is.
Yeah. Well, and the whole reason I joined lodge down further south of me, I was going to say the name, but I probably shouldn't call them out by name. But I joined another lodge further south.
I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah. Was because
I wouldn't name it either.
Yeah. Because one of the members there, was basically like asking for my help. Like, please come down, please join us. We'll
and I know which member. God bless you, Jason.
Shush.
You just batting 1,000 with that one.
Anyway, but because you do feel, when somebody or a lodge is asking for help, it is very tough to go, no, even though you have the time, that you could help, to go and say, no, I think you should probably demise, or because it is, there are those good guys down there that are sincere and do want to help their lodge, but so yeah, it is a tough thing to say, hey, you guys got to quit pluraling and propping up these failing lodges and stuff like that, because like the one guy that I know that's a member of all the lodges in this district, he's now the worshipful master of a lodge that his father was a worshipful master of. So he's he's got that legacy, but without all these plural members, that lodge probably would have gone away a while ago. So It's hard to just, it is hard especially in this organization to just simply take a look at the numbers and, well, we're going to make some hard business decisions, because there are thoughts and feelings and um, traditions and legacies that, that are important to some guys. My grandpappy sat in this lodge, 90 years ago. you know how do how do you tell that guy, well, your lodge sucks, so it needs to go
I
away?
almost got an endowment for Stanfield Lodge up in Denton for that very reason, and
Yeah,
I was able to keep myself from doing it.
right.
But I get it. I get it. And
Yeah.
I also get doing crap because somebody asked you to. I mean, that's
Mm,
or visiting a lodge and just seeing that they really needed the help.
yeah,
And some of the brothers were very earnestly trying to fix things, but needed a personality like yours to come in.
right.
Who knows where those lodges will be in the next couple of years, but we know where they are now, right? But yeah, that's
Yeah, Daniel is a different lodge, not that one.
I'm not even looking right now. It's probably one of mine that he's talking about.
No, the time the one that I joined,
Yeah.
no, it was a different one.
Still that string going, huh? But yeah, that's I get it. That's
No.
I never thought I'd be secretary, and here I am.
Mm.
And it's for that very reason. So I get it.
None of us thought you were going to be secretary, but
Nobody would ever want me to be secretary except for those crazy loons down there, right?
facts.
But I'm actually, man, you'd be surprised at how well I'm doing. That's because I'm so afraid of screwing it all up that I'm doing pretty good. But moving forward. But I've seen brothers. There's a member of two of my lodges that he's a member of about 20 different lodges, and in fact, he's a member of Daniel's lodge too, as well, I think. And yeah, I think it's Daniel's lodge. It's either Daniel's or Cody's. I think it's Daniel's though.
If it's who I'm thinking it is, it's mine.
Yeah, and is he at any of them ever? I don't know. I see him every once in a while.
I'll say he was there twice last year, but not. I'm gonna stop.
Yep. It was an election year, but we'll leave it there now that we've said too much. But okay, so we've talked about going back in time and trying to fix things, trying to set things in motion to where we're set up a little bit better today. What's something else that you would do? So, it wasn't just what we would do today with our shrinking membership, but if we had the opportunity to transport back into time and put things in motion to help us today in the lodges that we're members of, what kind of things would that be? Bueller. Okay, I'll start off. So I think that one of the things would be upholding the tradition of only having two lodges. That would be a good thing, because that would have forced people to make decisions a lot sooner than they are today, and it would have been more trickled instead of having a lot of lodges that are having to make those decisions, because we grew over a certain amount of time and then we started declining it over a certain amount of time. And it's like if making those plural memberships kind of circumvented that decline, to where, you know, you have X number of lodges that open each year during this growth period. And then in the decline period, you should have X number of lodges that are starting to merge and demise and things like that, so that you are right sized with your infrastructure. And so it wouldn't be such a burden on the membership today, right? That would be the hope anyways. I think that if we had made a decision back when to keep that plural down to only your mother lodge and the lodge that you're a member of currently, where you reside, I think that might have been a better thing. It would have forced a more what am I looking at? What's the word I'm looking for? A smoother transition, I guess, a more natural transition. Because now we're at a point to where we're having to make hard decisions of going from, you know, let's say, just throwing a number out there, 750 lodges out there, shrinking it down to, you know, 350, 400 lodges out there, to make it more manageable, to where it's not using up people's time and resources, if we were going to do something like that. So what are y'all thinking? What's something that you think we could have implemented way back when that would have helped today?
I don't know that there could have been something to do that could have been done about it. Just looking at kind of what has happened over the years, you know, you really saw, at least in my opinion, you really saw a shift in Freemasonry focus in right around the 80s. Like they kind of went more, they really shut down a lot of the esoteric education, trying to get the weirdness, what they consider weirdness, out of Freemasonry.
Yes.
And that's why you see some of the things, because those guys would have,
It's almost like it went commercialized.
So the ones that are in the senior leadership now would have been the wardens, your worshipful masters coming up in the and so one of the theories that I have, and I don't know if it really pans out, but Dennis, you probably remember this, the satanic scare in the 80s.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, so for those guys that might be younger, probably don't remember this, but there was this probably late 70s, right into the mid 80s, all the way up into the 90s, all in like early 90s, there was this nationwide scare that there was these satanic groups out there kidnapping children, sacrificing, doing, I mean, all sorts of weird stuff. And it turned out to be 99.9%. It turned out to be a hoax. It was like, it was a, I don't know what you would call it, a mass scare or something like that. Anyway, so I think part of what happened was because of like the Taxel hoax and stuff like that, that when that started happening, those in the Masonic lodges were like, we don't want to be associated.
Yeah, we got to make sure and separate ourselves. No skulls, no. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, oh, no. We don't do that kind of stuff. We're a service organization. We we love the baby Jesus. We're not into and all that kind of stuff. I mean, seriously, like they went to where they were just like, we don't want any part of this. I think that's when a lot of the skull, yeah, you're right. A lot of the more controversial emblems and stuff like that were taken down and said this
Erased from
erase
Freemasonry.
and stuff like that.
Yes.
So my point being is that, okay, so if I could go back to that, I don't know. I don't know what you could have done about it, because it was that scare was on such a massive scale. I mean, I remember my parents talking about it. I mean, I remember being in churches where they were preaching about it, that don't send your kids out on Halloween. There's, you know, razor blades and the apples and
Yes.
all that kind of.
Yes.
You remember all that kind of stuff. You started to take your candy to the ER to get it X-ray to make sure there was nothing.
Yeah,
All
right.
that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I that's where I think it damaged a lot of what masonry was supposed to be, because then all of a sudden now we just became yes, another Elks Lodge or Moose Lodge or
Right.
something like that, a place to, yeah, we're just a brotherhood, and
We're just a bunch of country boys.
we just do, good works and everything, whereas
Yes.
it's supposed to be, you're supposed to be working on yourself and learning all this and education and all this kind of stuff. So if I don't know what you could have done, but if there was a way to do something about it, that's one of the things I would do if I could go back in time. I don't know what you could have done, but
I think that's a good one. I think that's a great one. What else?
By the way, does anybody else remember the 80s satanic scare?
I remember it vaguely, Jason. I was a very, very, very young at that point, but I remember the razor blades in the apple, and you're gonna get kidnapped, and
Yep.
Oh yeah, I'm
You
with
know.
Daniel. I was young, but I remember, oh, we got to check your candy because there might be a needle with AIDS in it or something. It's like, okay, whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and that was, yeah, and that was another, golly, that was another thing in its own. So if you mention AIDS, golly, that was a big scare. There was so much fear mongering in those times, wasn't there?
And it's funny, as I watched a whole documentary on it, and it reminded me a lot. I
I'm
didn't
sorry,
realize
I'm not watching a documentary on that stuff. Not just kidding.
Well, it's kind of like looking at my childhood. I'm like, oh, neat. What I
full of
didn't realize
AIDS?
was that no, the whole satanic scare.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Anyway, they were up until like 1992 or 1990 or 93, they still had the FBI task force to look at these satanic groups that were supposedly out there. Like, that's how long it lasted. It was from like 1978 up until like the early 90s. I didn't even realize. Most of that had started to die out late 80s. I mean, you would hear some things in the early 90s, but I didn't realize, like, no kidding, the FBI had an entire task force dedicated to rooting out these supposed satanic groups that were going around kidnapping children and sacrificing and doing all sorts of other things.
Right.
Anyway, and I think Masonry at the time was responding to that, like trying to make sure that they didn't get lumped in with, what was supposedly evil out there.
What's crazy is you just hit the nail on the head on something very interesting, is that it seems like in the beginning Freemasonry were the shakers and the movers, and they were the creators. They were creating something wonderful. And then once we got to America and started building out America, now all of a sudden Freemasonry is just responding to things.
Yeah.
It seems like all we're doing nowadays is just responding. And now the latest thing that we're responding to is, shrinking membership. And it's not really membership isn't the answer. Having members, the numbers is not the problem. The problem is, managing what we have to begin with. And we, like the rest of America, the bad thing is that we've let people in that don't know how to manage anything. And we're not teaching them how to manage anything. And so we continue to have that deficit in our lodges. No, we have the opportunity in Texas, don't get me wrong, but the lodges themselves are not teaching people how to manage and how to be, at one time, well, if you were going to be in civil service, like let's say you wanted to run for city council or mayor or something like that, going through a lodge effectively and learning how to do each position and learning how to be an effective and efficient member of the lodge would certainly teach you how to be a city council person or a mayor or something like that, a leader in your community. But today we're not teaching people those values. We have officer leadership training now to teach that Grand Lodge is doing for the lodges, but the lodges themselves are not providing that value that we once were.
Yeah.
Well, we had the shakers and movers that were capable of being those mentors. Now we don't necessarily have that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And I've thought that, whether it's Masons or any other of these fraternal organizations, right. But I always thought that we really should start, especially with the younger generation, like emphasize, like if you join that, not that that's the whole thing, the whole reason to join, but
right.
If you're looking for value, like you learn how to be a part of a committee, how to make decisions as a corporate body, and motions and resolutions and voting and this and that. I think we don't emphasize that part enough. What I was going to bring up is kind of interesting, and I haven't thought about it in a while. So when you get initiated into the Elks, there is a part where they actually teach you how to pledge allegiance and the proper way that your hand should be held and stuff like that. And you figure, like, wait a minute, why would they incorporate that into their initiation ritual? Because it seems like everybody growing up knows how to put their hand over their heart when you pledge allegiance.
You
would think so, right?
But we are the home of the free, the land of the brave.
Right. I mean, it just seems like everybody would know that. So why would they include that?
Have a good one, Josh.
See you guys.
Why would they include that in the early 1900s? And I think it has a lot to do with, the Elks. They are very American organization. They founded Flag Day and all this kind of stuff. So they're very, very American centric. So what they were trying to do was to teach, like, how to be an American and
the importance of being an American.
The importance of being American. If you're going to pledge allegiance to the United States flag, you need, and if you're an Elk member, you are going to do it the right way. Same with Freemasonry. There's certain things that we, if we're going to be, if we're telling guys that they need to be, good citizens of the country into which they belong, like, teach them how to be that citizen and how to manage and run. You know what I mean? Like there is a part of it that you could actually emphasize.
That's in fact, I would like to say, because I truly believe Brad did such a great job this year, last year as master of his lodge. I think that there's something to be said about the fact that I believe with the effort you put in and all the things you learned, all the skills you learned in trying to be the best that you could be, I think that you really did learn what it would take to be in civil service. If you wanted to run for council or something like that, you would be able to join in, know how to manage that situation, know how to think for the greater good, know how to plan for the greater good. I think that because I'm using you as reference because I know that you did do so much for the lodge and you did work so hard and you learned the key things that you needed to learn in a quick sense and did such a great job that I think that you did learn what needed to be done, but I can't say that that's true for all lodges. And Jason, you're absolutely right. I think that we should have that to say, look, guys, not that this is what you're joining for, just like we say in you're not here to get a better job or whatever. We're not here to promote you in your job or whatever. I can say that if somebody actually takes it seriously and does a good job and does everything that they should do, then they could come out on the back end, being better prepared to be a leader and a boss and move up the line in their job, as well as become civil servants. I truly believe that. And if we took our lodges more seriously, we could use that as one of the things that, another benefit of being a member of a lodge.
Yeah, I agree. Things that I did last year basically uh, shaped me into a different human. It made me a leader.
You think differently than you did 2 years ago, don't you?
100%. Things are happening in my life now that probably wouldn't have happened had I not done the leadership in the lodge because it shaped me into a different human. The servant leadership shaped me into a different type of person where I was doing stuff not for me, but for the lodge. And it showed me how to, lead a group of people. And my sphere of influence is not just in my lodge, it's like all around to members of lodges all around me.
Yep.
Which is pretty great. And it not just does that, it like changed how I act at work. It changes how I act at home. My relationship with my kids and my wife is different. Um, People at work is different. Like how I interact with customers at work is different. It's all different.
Well, and yes, and again, your sphere of influence has grown exponentially, and who's to say that you don't need something like you don't need uh, a new mortgage on your house or something, and you happen to know somebody that can help you. You you have a question that only a lawyer can answer, and you happen to know 3 or 4 of them now that you can call, and they would be able to give you a quick answer without you having to go out and hire a lawyer and worry about that situation. That's the beauty of it, is that not that we do it to take advantage of those things, and we don't do it for that reason, but that's a benefit. And you only have people that are willing to offer you whatever you need once you take that true leadership responsibility. Once you take it to that next level like you did, people take you seriously, and they know you care about what you're doing and who and your path in life, so they want to help. whereas before, if you don't take yourself seriously, nobody's going to take you seriously. So nobody, it's kind of like that person that's always showing up asking for help when, I can help them, but they're just going to do the same thing again. Don't say anything, Jason. But, it's like that guy that just keeps asking, and no matter what you do, he's going to keep asking anyway. So you just don't even want to help him. But the guy that is doing positive things for other people all the time and working hard for the benefit of everyone all the time, it kind of leads you to want to help that person to succeed. And, like Jason said, when somebody needs your help, you kind of take that on because you're the leader that you are. I think that's absolutely a benefit. And then because you're the leader that you are, other people are willing to help you as well. So yeah, that's something great we have to offer that we just haven't capitalized on, that maybe we should have put a little bit more focus on in the past.
Yeah.
I think along the same time that Jason was talking about shifting and taking away the skulls and this and that, I think that during that time we got into a lot of the pomp and circumstance of different awards and different get a pin for this, get a this, get a certificate for this, a pin for this, a feather in your cap for this, whatever. We got a lot of that going on also during that same period that kind of negated the necessity of becoming that good business leader, because it kind of became who you knew instead of what you knew. And it was tied to something different. It wasn't tied to that mutual respect that we see today that's coming back. It wasn't tied to that. It was tied to something else. Who
I
had
think
what
there's
on who?
I think there's some of that too, Dennis, is today, if we think about our ritual, we're told there's one thing that's more important than anything else, right? We learned that lesson early on in our initiation. And instead we chase all these other things, right? Well, I want to be in the shrine. I want to be in the Scottish Rite. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to go do this exclusive organization that only invites people to it. But I got to know the right people for that, right? But in reality, what you were just pointing out, like with Brad and, hey, I'm kind of the same way. I was like, wait a second, I needed somebody to answer a question today. I was like, I can reach out to this group, and somebody connected me there. Right. And, it's one of those deals where we can make connections, but they aren't directly for our benefit in the immediate moment. Right. That's where I'm going with it. Right. Are we supposed to seek those things out, or are we just supposed to seek things out that are good, and then those other things will come eventually?
I think it's same. You do have to seek it out, and if you're not intentional with your Freemasonry, nobody else is going to be intentional for you.
Yeah, I hear that. I guess what I'm trying to say is the purpose of it to only do those things? Is the purpose of it to progress yourself financially and enrich yourself financially? Because that would be the wrong instance, right? If it's like, hey, I want to be with the movers and shakers just because they're the movers and shakers and they can help me get along and move forward with
yes, and that's what
agenda, right?
what I was talking about. Yes, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah.
What was happening along the same time was, sucking up to the movers and shakers just to be a mover and shaker, and really having nothing to contribute.
Yeah. I think we're now on the same page there.
Yes, and now you got a bunch of guys leading this organization that really had nothing to contribute. That all they could contribute is a thank you to you know,
Thank
he who
you too.
who is above that gave me that position.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. That's where I was going with it. I maybe I took the too long of a route to get
at
there.
one time, all roads led to Rome.
Yeah. It's like, oh, I'm just going to join this because I know I can get access to, this person and that person and that person. And
Yes.
then nowadays, I think you've seen the repercussions of that too, though, because, how many people are on city council for Masons? How many people are in other areas of service organizations that are Freemasons? It's very few. Because, there's on YouTube, there's going to be, oh, who's the Illuminati? Who's this? What are you controlling? Nothing. We can barely agree on green beans.
I know it.
So, yeah,
that's a fact.
But at the same time, if you do take it seriously, you will get skills, you will get knowledge, you will make connections that are going to put you in rooms with people that can help you, but that's not the reason to join and to do it, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, and then you typically, doing it long enough and being focused enough, you end up with more of those people joining your lodge. Just like in the Masonic world, where people like to surround themselves with other people that are focused individuals, it's the same way in the business world. So, when you see, a few heavy focused guys in your office, or let's say, and you find out they're a Mason, then that makes you want to become a Mason. So then you end up having, more members in your lodge that are of the same mindset of helping each other to improve, so that the greater good is found. We have that in one of my lodges. We have sheriffs and the head of DPS, he's a past county judge, and then I was on the planning and zoning, and one's the director of the big monument down here. And after a while, you realize, you look around and you look at all the people that are members. Some are a couple of big ranchers in the area. You look around and you realize that these are all the people who are making a difference in the community. And the reason why they joined is because they wanted to be with other people that make a difference in the community.
Yeah. I'd plug our book club that we just finished, the Kabbalion, as an inner circle. I'm going to go ahead and make that plug for you, Dennis.
You go right ahead.
We were talking about that, and that's a great book to read, but I think some of those discussions we had in the book club talk about that, the attraction and things like that. Like, how do you attract that? You like people find those like things, and that's to your point.
And they just the synergy just brings each other together.
And equally, if you have a negative group, it's going to repel those people.
Yes. And that's why I have stopped attending certain lodges, for real. I never intended on being a member of so many lodges, but I ended up getting an endowment, and then realized, man, these guys are Debbie Downers. I don't want to be a part of this. I want to be a part of people that I don't want to walk in and everybody's going, wah, wah.
Yeah.
Telling me about their bad day. I want to talk about the good stuff. But yeah, I mean, that's and with that plug, Inner Circle members, the next one we're going to do is going to be Esoterica by Albert Pike. That's the next book that we're going to do. So everybody get on, well, if you're a Scottish Rite member, get on the Scottish Rite website and get Esoterica. Brad, did you say you're joining Scottish Rite this reunion? Nice, nice.
Yep. Already set up. I think I'm going to end up being a couple of degrees too.
Very cool. Very cool. When you see the 21st degree, the degree master is Mike King, and you go up there and you introduce yourself to him and you tell him that you know me, and I guarantee you he'll let you be king in his degree next reunion. He keeps wanting me to come up there with him and be king. I love Mike. He's one of my favorite people down here in Corpus. He's a native Dallas Mason, and he's still the degree master for the 21st degree and up at the Dallas Scottish Rite.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And I've got that book that Esoterica. I've already
Good.
listened to it on Audible, but it was
There's a lot to unpack.
yeah, that was one of those books that I probably need to be sitting down looking at while I'm listening to it
Yes,
and stopping and rewinding and like, what did
I
he
agree.
say? And
I agree. That's how I did it. That's how I did it, because I would have to go back and then just contemplate one thought, and it's like brilliance, and then go on to the next thought, because it's it's also going to be a good introductory for how Albert Pike writes, so that you'll be ready for morals and dogma.
Speaking of which, this Thursday we are having a Master Mason night for the Phoenix Academy
Yes, if you're in San Antonio
or the surrounding areas.
or surrounding areas, come on down.
And when we say surrounding areas, we mean 1 to 2 hours around anywhere.
Yeah, our valley is the largest in Texas.
Yeah.
And
So
it goes, go ahead.
I
I
was just
won't steal
saying
your
it.
thunder.
So this Thursday, we're going to do kind of an intro to the Scottish Rite. So the idea is to bring any Master Mason can come to our Phoenix Academy. So we'll do an introduction. We'll do a vignette of the 17th degree, and then we've got 2 presentations, one on symbolism and then one on basically the square and compass and the difference in how Blue Lodge interprets it versus how Albert Pike. They're not completely different, but Albert Pike takes it into a little bit different direction. So contrasting.
Who's giving that presentation?
Be this guy.
Oh, send it to me.
Now, you got to.
Yes.
No, you got to see it in person.
I have to work, so I won't be able to get up there.
No, I will. I'm still tweaking it. And
who's doing the other one?
Brother Secretary.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Nice. That should be interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I can't believe you're letting him loose with Master Masons. But, I'm only saying that because I know he's not watching this show.
Yeah, you don't know.
I do know. But that's going to be a great night. So, brothers, we have a Phoenix Academy we meet in person once a month on the 3rd Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
And we meet on Zoom once a month as a book club type of thing. Every, what is it? Fourth Monday?
Third Monday.
Third Monday. Third Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's different opportunities to learn with our Phoenix Academy, and that's basically our education committee that tries to get information out to the brothers to help continue their education so they can take it back to the Blue Lodge, because ultimately we're in the Scottish Rite to strengthen our Blue Lodges with esoteric knowledge.
Yep. And we finally got rid of the dead weight of Kohanki, so we have a new we have a new director of the online Phoenix Academy. So
Yeah, he made that very clear the other
yeah.
day. Yeah, he made that very clear the other day in a email. I had a couple of brothers call me and say, "What's going on? What's happening with this? What's he asking?" I said, "Oh, it's no big deal. This is what's going on."
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Some of the older guys, they got the email and they're all confused.
Yeah.
But it's all right.
Did they forget that Brad was actually in Arkansas now? I mean,
I know, and that's what I explained to both of them is, look, guys, this is way overdue. It's been a while.
yeah, I think there were some other there's some other lodges and stuff that he's trying to get involved in Arkansas, and
Yep.
it was starting to take up a lot of his time. So
I understand. It's hard enough doing multiple things in one district, you know, in one grand jurisdiction, much less trying to do two.
Yeah. So,
but that's you know, we are an hour and a half, 2 hours away in Corpus, so the guys can't always get up to the valley. So we have a Scottish Rite Club that's getting together and doing the same thing, doing education, and it's not to detract from what's happening at the Phoenix Academy because they're doing something different. So if you end up being a part of our club in Corpus Christi, for all you brothers that are watching that are down in South Texas with me, we're doing the degrees, going through all the different degrees in our club. But if you go up to the Phoenix Academy up in the valley and up in San Antonio, then you'll actually get a different experience. You'll get more education. There's so many different opportunities within the Scottish Rite to be educated on Freemasonry. It's just ridiculous. And so I'm real proud of our valley.
Well, and our new PR is
very supportive and
he wants to make a concerted effort to
take care, Brad. It's good seeing you tonight. We're going to wrap up here in a minute. I apologize. I ran late. I looked at it once you said that.
Yeah. He wants to revitalize older Scottish Rite clubs that maybe used to exist, but also to get new clubs in different areas. And yeah, you know what? I mean, take it and run with it and expand on it. And, you know, try and get away from this mindset that everything has to center right around San Antonio. Like,
I agree. Yeah. I agree. That's part of the reason why we don't have, well, it's like with anything else. It's with any other appendant body out there. When everything is formulated around this nucleus, and granted, that's where the bulk of the membership comes from, sure. But when everything is formulated around that nucleus, then the guys out here are less willing to join because they don't have something to do. You know, when the guys out here are not getting opportunity, then I say, well, why do I care? Why am I going to show up? I'm not going to ever get picked for anything anyways.
Right. Yeah.
You got to, and that ties right along in with what we've been talking about tonight with the value of the membership, doing, just making sure that we have something for, it's not that we can be all things to all people, but being if we are the only lodge within an hour range of anybody else, we damn sure ought to have some kind of education for the guys who want education.
Right.
And have social aspects for the people who want social aspects. It can't just be about, going to a meeting to satisfy the laws of the Grand Lodge of Texas and then going home. So let's go ahead and start with final thoughts. Who wants to go first? Justin, you've been quiet tonight. Just kidding. Just kidding. People, he's feeling sick, so he's not gonna talk. Hopefully, he sounds like a slee sack. If you're old enough to know that reference.
I think my final thought is I think the biggest indicator to me that someone has lost their way in masonry is, and I'm not going to go into the details of the situation, but essentially he was involved in so many organizations that I feel like he financially could not keep up and basically started stealing, basically, just to maintain his membership in all these different groups that he was a part of. It was like, if you resort to that because you're so obsessed with staying in these groups and being in the inner circle, then you've completely missed the point. And so that's what I would say is, try. To be honest with you, I have to do that every once in a while, is to step back and think, is what I'm doing contributing, or is it am I just feeding my own ego? So it's my final thought.
That's a good one. That's a real good one. What you got, Tom?
There's most of my final thought would be like with the beginning of the talk, we were talking about ways of basically finding what the engagement was. And it's like I said, I kind of have the benefit that I've been in the business world. So when you get into management, pretty much even when I ran a weld shop, welders would come up to me and be like, what exactly do you do? And I was like, I only have one job. I fix problems. And that's all I do. I spend most of my day looking over reports on what's getting done, what isn't getting done. And then I'm dissecting, okay, why is this particular group of guys always behind schedule? And then that's when I deep dive into it. I mean, we even had the one company I worked for, we manufactured rock sliders for Tacoma pickups. And each welder was responsible for making 4 sets a day. And usually some guys would get upset when we hired them, because they're like, well, you can't do 4 sets. I'm like, well, the only reason why we're doing 4 sets is when this company came from California, they were only doing 2. Well, when they hired me as a lead, they seen I could do 4. They're like, well, we need to up that number to 4. And I said, that's because I didn't take a bathroom break. I didn't stop welding. There was no pause between things. And we had one particular guy that would only do maybe 1.5. And I was like, dude, you're not going to have the job very long, because the company makes $500 off every set we made. So if we're expected to do 3 just so you can keep your job, and you're doing less than 2, that means every day you're costing the company at least $500. That's $2,500 a week plus what we pay you. So you're not going to be around very long because of that. But this particular guy, I went down because every weld station had a camera. And I actually went through the video of him building one, and I would timestamp every movement he did. And he was just a guy, because when you're in weld school, they teach you to dry run all of your welds, and like every side of a slider was like 70 welds. Mind you, they were only like 2-inch welds, but I said, you've been welding like 5 years, but I said, you dry run every weld you're about to do. I was like, and I counted down how much time it took you, because it would take him well over 4 hours. I was like, if you didn't do that dry weld, I was like, and you didn't walk around the table 40 times, and you just stayed one spot, I said, you would have this set done in 1.5 hours. And he was like, really? I'm like, yeah. I was like, that's what I'm here for, is to it's kind of like when you have an engineer come in and they look at a manufacturing process, and I'll be like, okay, how can we get all of the tools and everything that this guy needs within arm's reach so he doesn't have to walk away and waste time getting a tool? And that's just to make it more efficient. So, and that's, like I said, I liked a couple of things that Cody had said, but, it just seems, my experience so far is a bunch of masters come in with their own ideas, and then they say, well, I think this is what the members want. Well, then you start talking to a couple of brothers and like, man, this guy's off the rails because ain't none of us interested in any of this. You know, and it's in, I learned from being in management in my 30s, where this was probably back in the 90s, where pretty much you just told the guys, this is what you're going to do because the owners, that's what they want. You didn't explain anything. You said, this is just the way it is. You don't do it, we'll get rid of you. Well, then later on in life, when I got back into management, they're like, well, you can't run a shop like that anymore. You got to get buy-in from those employees. You know, this isn't a union. You know, so unless you got the guys bought into it, which a lot of times, even when I was at Advanced Auto Parts, a lot of times they would have things come down from corporate, and every time I would get a memo about it, I'd have a meeting. And I didn't call them store meetings; they were called team meetings. Because I'm like, okay, you know, we're going to rephrase it so it doesn't sound like some boring thing. And every time that they would have some mandate, because they gave us the freedom as the manager of the store to execute that and, you know, penalize people that weren't going by policy. And I would always be the first one. If I didn't agree with the policy and the people in my store didn't agree with it, we didn't follow it. And of course, I took some heat for it, but it was kind of like, I kind of viewed things because I seen an interview. I think it was Coach K, the Duke basketball coach for years, and they were asking him how what was it because he was an assistant coach under Bobby Knight at the West Point. They thought that's what made them successful, and he goes, no, he goes, really, we had one basic policy thing with Duke basketball, and it was that a lot of teams have rules. Because at Duke, we don't have rules, we have expectations. Because when you have rules, people break rules. But when you have an expectation, people are most likely not going to let you down. And I thought that was very profound that he worded it that way. I mean, I even got it to when, and I'm sure if any of y'all have been bosses and you get to the point where you have to write somebody up, they call them write-ups. I never called them write-ups. I called them employee improvement meetings. You know, you're doing a behavior that is not good to be doing, and we try to figure out a way to correct it. You know, and that was just the way I kind of dealt with it. And I mean, still a lot of it is just the way that you're dealing with the people. Because I told Justin the story a year ago when I was at Fellowcraft. I took over as supervisor at this manufacturing company, and the one day the manager from shipping come over and he knocked on my office door 3 times. And I looked up and I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird. I said, yeah, come on in. And he looked at me and goes, are you a traveling man? And I'm like, okay, nobody's ever asked me that. I'm thinking about, oh crap. Oh, you mean my Mason? He's like, yeah. I said, yeah, how'd you know? Because I didn't have anything in my office. I didn't wear anything because I was still a Fellowcraft. And he was like, well, I see the way that you deal with your employees. He goes, I figured either you were a Mason or you should be. And I took that as a huge compliment because he was basing it solely on the way I acted. And he had brought up the one point that he's seen a lot of times. I made a point to praise the employees that were doing what they should be doing. And I think the day before that, we had a part that was, we basically lost $10,000 because we had to scrap it. He goes, the funny thing is when you talk to that kid about how he screwed up this part, and he screwed it up pretty bad, because your tone was no different than it was when you were praising him the week before. And he goes, we haven't had supervisors like that in this place because most of them are screaming. I said, I'm too old to be screaming at people. I was the heck with that. And I mean, it was just the ways that I ran things, because I had another time a production manager come in that hired me, and we're talking, my office door is partially open, and he hears somebody drop an F-bomb in the shop. All of a sudden, I had a welder come in the door. He said, oh, I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know you were in here. He goes, it won't happen again. I'm like, okay, that's cool. And my boss is like, how the hell did you get that to be done? And I was like, no, because it was an expectation when I started. I said, I have one major rule. That is, we spend more time with each other than we do with our families. So you should have respect for each other. And I said, if I ever find out that you're not respecting another employee, I will get rid of you. It's like, it's a nice, simple rule. And I was like, so I don't want to hear F-bombs. I don't want to hear cussing. I don't want to hear, because it's a weld shop, you know, a lot of them are out of control and people screaming at each other across the shop. I said, I don't want to hear it. Because you should be working. You shouldn't have time to be hollering at the guy 30 feet away.
Right.
But he said, well, that was one of the reasons why we brought you in, was because we knew about your experience, and that when you're in a shop, you usually turn things around. But I did too good of a job, because after 4 months, I said, okay, he's fixed all of our problems. We can go without a supervisor. Like, and my wife was livid. I was like, honey, that's the business. I was like, all they did was they seen my experience. I've been doing this 25 years. Half of it was in management. So like, he's worked, because I've worked for some big companies like Manitowoc Cranes. I've worked for Harley Davidson. So the resume, they're like, oh yeah, we need to get this guy in here. Okay. So I said, no, I'd rather, and that's why we eventually are trying to open our own shop, because I said, yeah, I'm getting tired of working for idiots. Because they're just
Nice.
in a lot of companies that way, and I kind of see it with masonry, that we have, and it's not dishing on somebody, but I think we have a lot of people that are in key positions that really should not be there, and they're not leaders at all. You know, we've got guys that have been treasurers and secretaries that have no business experience at all. And then it's like this last round of installing officers. I was, 2 of my lodges, I was on the audit committee, and I got a real education on how they do things with the audit committee at these lodges, because I'm like, where's the line entry sheets? And they're like, what do you mean? You just have to sign that. Like, no, I need to see the line entries of what was paid and what was received and all this. And no, well, we've never had anybody ask about that. I'm like, well, that's part of my job being on this committee, is to go through and say, okay, this isn't making a whole lot of sense with it. Because one of the lodges, it was like we gave out the $1,000 scholarships, and there was a line entry for the check that was written out to the student, but it's for exactly 1,000. It wasn't the part that was matched from Grand Lodge. I'm like, where's that? They're like, what do you mean? I was like, well, imagine you received the money from Grand Lodge and then you write them one check. You know, they're like, okay, we never really delved that deep into it. And I'm like, well, I think you should. And then I heard you're supposed to do a budget. And I'm like, okay, nobody's doing a budget. I was like, okay, this is why we have no idea what's going on with the money, and we keep wondering why we're losing money every year. That's like, okay, this is probably why we don't pay enough attention to the little details. And that was kind of what we were talking about. I kind of like, because I was like, okay, what are we going to talk about this week? Hopefully it's not Charlie Kirk, but I was like, and I was like, okay, now, yeah, because that subject is good, and that's kind of why I like this group, because we kind of go into the nuts and bolts. And
Right.
I've always been the details type guy, that the smallest details are what makes the difference.
Right.
A lot of guys just want to fly through with it and just kind of go with the status quo, you know. And it's like, well, if you're not paying attention to these little things, before you know it, it becomes a big problem.
Well, and that's exactly why we were going through kind of the scenario of what could we have done before, and I think that it's been a good discussion as well. So I appreciate you coming on tonight. Daniel, what do you got?
All right, I found the mute button. I think the biggest thing for me is I just reinforce Right Worshipful Cody Stewart's words, right? What are we doing to retain who we have in our lodges today? What are we doing to bring back those members who already are paying dues? They're just not showing up. Why are they not showing up? Go reach out to them, talk to them. You know, that's on the Vanguard application, actually.
It
you
is.
know, it's and let's be honest, the Vanguard is not what it's what you should be doing, period. Not
it is. It's not it's not just to get a parking spot at Grand Lodge. It really, if you're doing that, you're doing Freemasonry.
Yep, yep. And that's going to not only encourage those members to come back, it's going to bring the positive energy. It's going to bring that energetic, magnetic spirit that's going to attract other men to come in and go, what is different about you guys? Why are you doing this, right? Tom, you just mentioned it. Somebody said, are you a Freemason? They didn't know anything else about you, right? That in his mind, you were already a good man. And
Yes.
I think that's it for me, right? Is are we actually improving the people around us through our actions, our words, and our deeds? Are we a place they want to be? And are we people they want to be around? If not, then we need to figure out what's wrong and we need to fix it. Period. That's it. That's what I got tonight for my final thoughts.
Well, I'll just interject another thing on top of what Daniel was just saying. Right before I joined, I read a book where they had mentioned about legacies. And the author had suggested that everyone write your own obituary about your life so far. And he said, if you don't like what you see that you wrote, like you didn't seem to have accomplished much, then you need things to change that. And that was when I started thinking about Masonry again. You know, I was like, yeah, it's, to me, every time I see a Masonic funeral thing from Grand Lodge and they're mentioning his history of what he did, and I was like, wow. So I know about a year ago, I seen one, the guy was even a Texas Ranger. And I mean, it was just amazing, all the things that he had accomplished in his life. And I was like, well, yeah, I want to make sure that when I'm gone and my kids and grandkids look at my obituary, you know, they're like, oh, he was really cool. That was a good guy. You know, that's somebody I want to be like.
And that's something that ties into this as well. That ties into my final thought. So, you know, we've talked a lot about a lot of things tonight, and I do believe that we need to be focused on the membership that we have today, and but we can't forget that even though we have several older brothers, we can't forget that we have younger brothers now as well, and their needs are going to be different than what the older brothers' needs are. You know, one thing that I've noticed over the years, well, and especially here in the little town that I live in, you know, there's a breakfast every Monday, every first Monday of the month at one of the churches, men's breakfast, and then there's a men's breakfast at another church on Saturday, and every day at 3 p.m. all the old guys get together for coffee. Every day at lunch there's a lunch thing for the older retirees in the community. Older people just want to get together. They just want to get together and know everyone's still alive, right? Younger guys, yeah, they want to get together also, but they want to do things while they're together. They want to socialize. They want to expand on their understanding of things. They want to practice that thing called rhetoric. And I think one of the keys that I believe, and I know everybody here on the podcast believes, is education, education, education. And while we may have just some country boys, good old boys that are at our lodges, we also have young guys that are growing up on the internet because they grew up in the country, and they're learning and they're educated and they want to know more about this thing called Freemasonry. I think we can't go wrong if we go backwards to where we started and focus on what we were started for. the education involved in the Enlightenment, because we're in a very polarized world today. And the one thing that there isn't a lot of is enlightenment. You're either under this understanding, and that's exactly where you want to stay, and you want to fight the person on the other side, or you're in this understanding, and this is how you want to stay, and you want to fight the other person on the other side. That's our world today, and that's what these young people are seeing. And if you look at the history of Freemasonry, you see something different. You see this thing called rhetoric that comes up on all the web searches when you look up the different degrees of Masonry and stuff like that. You see all these different core values that we have, that we don't necessarily bring religion or politics into the lodge. However, we are a faith-based type fraternity that believes in God, and we do teach people how to navigate within a civil service type organization. So we are helping people learn how to navigate that atmosphere, that platform, without the effects of the polarized viewpoints. So you're really primed for being a better service to your community. One of the other things that I really liked about the discussion tonight was the thought about right sizing, and that, like in those Marvel movies that we had started the whole talk about, some of the people that after Thanos killed all the people or whatever, dissolved them, whatever, some of the people were perfectly happy with the situation they were in, and they felt like everything was thriving that way, that they had an opportunity to grow from that point on. Well, I think we're at that position today to where we are small enough and tight enough that we could make a real difference in our own Freemasonry if we just take that opportunity to be effective and efficient and intentional with our Freemasonry. So I think if we take all these different things that we talked about tonight and apply them to our lodges, I think our lodges will be better for it. I think our membership will be better for it. And ultimately, we do have to focus on what's in front of us, and make sure that we're bringing value to the people who are showing up. But at the same time, as someone who has learned as a leader, as you learn to be a leader, you learn to think about the greater good, then we need to help express to the brothers that are members of our lodges that we need to reach out to these other brothers and find out why they're not there. And we need to think about the greater good and start trying to figure out ways to re-engage these people into our lodges before it's too late, before the next time we see them is at their funeral. So, brothers, that's about all I have tonight. I thank you so much for coming on. Like Daniel and I said, the next book in the book club is going to be Esoterica by Albert Pike, and we are going to take a deep dive in the first 3 degrees of Freemasonry based off of what's written in that book by Albert Pike. And we are going to have the dinner at Grand Lodge this year. That's another great announcement that has come about, that has all been confirmed. It's all in the works, and so that's another benefit of coming to Grand Lodge and being a part of that social aspect. You know, I hate to say it, but you know, this is our third year for having this dinner. Maybe the numbers are increasing at Grand Lodge because of our dinners. I don't know. Maybe that's what it is. Who could say? But you know, I know everybody that goes, they certainly love it. But I know that was bad. That was so bad. That ego thing, it just gets me every time. But anyways, Jason's whole screen is shaking because he's laughing so hard. All right, so brothers, thank you for coming on. We have some great things coming up. The next book club is going to start this next month. We may have to take a month to get everybody on board with the book, make sure everybody's got the book and can start reading it. Chapter 1. Or maybe we'll just do the preface first, because that's pretty long too with Albert Pike. Or that one's done by Arturo de Hoyos, I think. But anyways, brothers, if you're in the San Antonio area, go to the Phoenix Academy if you're interested in joining Scottish Rite. I can tell you, you will not regret it. That's the one appendant body I found the Scottish Rite, and in the Scottish Rite, I found my people. So other than that, thank you for coming on. Brothers, keep it between the points. We'll see y'all next week.